I'm always a little shocked by the level of dishonesty that sometimes comes out of Christian apologetics. It never fails to amaze me, some of the things that get said, as long as it serves their narrative. And the kind of things that you'll hear, one of the craziest ones that I heard, I was in a debate in a Discord, and we were talking about how reliable the different texts were throughout the generations. And I mentioned the Codex Sinaiticus and it not having the longer ending of the book of Mark. And whenever I mentioned it not having the longer endings, starting from, I think, 16:9 forward about the resurrection, I was immediately hit with one that I had never heard before. That one was totally not reliable. That's why they found that one in a trash can. And I was so blown away by this one. It's one that I had never heard before. Sorry about this in the background. It came absolutely out of nowhere, and it was so intellectually dishonest that it was disarming. Like I didn't know what to say about it. But the more I just let it stew, I couldn't help but just blast this guy on this subject. And what's ridiculous about it is, first of all, the idea that it was found in a trash can and that it was dismissed as not having any value or that it wasn't true is absolutely false. It's not how the Codex Sinaiticus was come about to start with. Secondly, the Codex Sinaiticus had a 6th or 7th century rewrite where the text was reworked and some of the missing and damaged portions of it was completely repaired. This is why now when you look at the Codex Sinaiticus online on their codexsinaiticus.com, you'll see the blue letter sections were not originally there. And you actually have, from the 6th or 7th century when it got redone, you have these little notes that are written next to when verses were added or they weren't a part of the original text inside of that document. So you'll have notations. And secondly, the Codex Vaticanus also doesn't have the longer ending of Mark. So both of these codexes don't have the longer ending of Mark. And but anyway, the idea that they would throw this out after 400 years after it was written, they wind up reworking this. It's preserved for all of these generations, and now the idea that someone would just look at this and say, "Oh well, yeah, it doesn't have Mark. It must not be reliable," as if that gave any validity to whether it was originally a part of the text or wasn't a part of the text. That would have nothing to do with it. But the Codex Vaticanus, the oldest known unicile codice and the oldest known text that covers the entire book of Mark, the Vaticanus also does not have the longer ending of Mark. So the single two oldest texts that exist of Mark don't have it. And it's something that, for whatever reason, the inner cowardness in Christian apologetics will not admit that the two single oldest documents that we have of the single oldest book that spoke about Jesus as a person, that they don't have the resurrection story in the oldest two versions of that. It's not present. And that's something that you can make every reason in the world. You can make every excuse in the world to say, "Oh, it was trash." Oh, or I love the old one. I think, what's the gentleman's name? Wes Huff did the whole, yes, but the Codex Vaticanus has a gap, like where you could put, that we think the writer knew that that was a version and that they could have added it in, so they left that space blank. This is completely not true. There are other books of the Bible that in the Codex Vaticanus and in the Codex Sinaiticus that they end that chapter and they have a long space. This doesn't mean that they wanted to come back and add more to that book later on, or that they thought there was more of version of that book that was available. This is absolutely ridiculous. So the apologists on this, trying to defend that this wasn't something that was added, they get so ridiculous, and it's so intellectually dishonest. I wish that I could have a conversation with an apologist that would simply say, yes, the oldest two texts that we know of the oldest gospel of the Bible, which Mark is the oldest gospel of the Bible, and the oldest texts that exist at all of that, of the book of Mark, they don't have the long ending. And if you can have this intellectual honesty and say that, then we can have an open dialect. But it doesn't serve their narrative that that the Bible is inerrant, that nothing could be wrong, that nothing got added to it or anything like that. It's completely, the transparent and perfect Word of God. This doesn't serve that narrative, so there's constant, hedging and defensiveness. Oh, it came out of a garbage can, or whatever other nonsense that they can come up with. Oh, well, that spot got left open so it could get written in. This is just making stuff up to try to defend a narrative. And this is why we can't have an intellectual conversation. It's why we can't have an honest conversation, because these things happen. I've heard this old song from a YouTube meme, "Lying for Jesus," and it was like a church group singing, "Lying for Jesus, lying for Jesus." It was so hilarious. I can't help but think of it every time I hear a Christian apologist do these types of tricks or make these kind of statements. The things that they'll come up with, they really are ridiculous. And apologists, I'm sorry, you have to do better, or we can't have a real conversation about these kind of things.